The night air was heavy with perfume, smoke, and secrets. Inside the gleaming Rose Hill Hotel, chandeliers dripped golden light over laughter and clinking glasses. But outside, on the cracked pavement beneath the back exit, a girl sat alone, hugging her knees beneath a flickering street lamp. Amara's uniform was torn. Her cheek still bore the red print of a slap. In her trembling hand was the termination slip, stamped and signed. Disrespect toward a guest. That guest had spilled more than wine. He'd spilled the lie that shattered her world. One accusation from a man in silk, and suddenly the orphan girl with the quiet eyes became a threat. No one asked her side. No one ever did. The back door slammed shut behind her. She flinched, even though there was no one left to fear, only silence and the rustle of paper bags blowing through the empty street. Her stomach growled, but she ignored it. Hunger was familiar. Shame was not. Pulling the hotel badge from her chest, she stared at it. She'd worn it with pride, ironing her clothes at dawn, walking miles just to smile behind reception. It had been a chance, a lifeline. Now it was junk metal. She dropped it into the gutter. Footsteps passed on the far sidewalk. No one looked twice at the girl in hotel blacks, sitting on cold concrete like a ghost in the city. The night was full of more interesting things, more profitable stories. Pulling her knees tighter, Amara whispered to herself, "You won't break, you won't beg." But a single tear betrayed her. She stood slowly, brushing dust from her skirt. With nowhere to go, she walked, barefoot, quiet, invisible. Around the corner, the city exhaled steam from underground vents. Bright lights flickered over a looming construction site where half a building stood like a wounded giant. Amara stared at the scaffolding. Work. That's all she wanted. Not mercy. Just a chance. She slipped past the warning signs and stepped into the skeletal structure. A guard shouted behind her, but she didn't stop. Not this time. From the top floor, behind mirrored windows, Leon Hartman watched the cameras. His eyes paused on the image of a girl pushing through the mud and metal, face bruised, feet bare. And yet, she stood tall. He leaned forward, curiosity sparked. "Who are you?" he murmured. The night didn't answer, but fate already had. Dust curled around her ankles as Amara stepped into the skeleton of the half-built tower. The site smelled of cement, rust, and smoke, raw, unfinished, brutal. Iron rods jutted like spears from the floor. Tools clanged in the distance. Somewhere above, a welder's torch hissed like a warning. A man in a yellow vest noticed her. Hey girl, this is private property." Amara didn't flinch. "Please, I just want work. I can clean, cook, run errands, anything." He eyed her dirt-smudged face, the torn uniform. "There's no job here for street girls. Out." She opened her mouth, but a firm grip landed on her arm. Another worker joined in, dragging her back toward the gate. "Please," Amara cried. "Just let me speak to someone. One chance. Please." From the top floor, behind a tinted glass window, Leon Hartman stood motionless. He'd been reviewing blueprints when the security alert pinged. At first, he thought it was another thief. But the way she moved, desperate but proud, made him pause. There was something familiar in the way she refused to bow. He turned to his assistant. "Bring her up." The assistant blinked. "Sir?" "Now." Minutes later, Amara stood at the edge of a glossy office, dust clinging to her skin, eyes locked on the man behind the desk. He didn't speak at first, just studied her. Sharp suit, silver cufflinks, unreadable expression. But his eyes, those eyes had seen too much, too soon. "You entered illegally," Leon finally said. Amara lifted her chin. "I asked for work, not charity." "Do you know who I am?" "No," she replied, "but I know I'm not afraid." A long silence stretched between them. Then, for the first time in months, Leon Hartman did something unexpected. He smiled. Barely, briefly, but it was real. "What's your name?" "Amara." "Can you clean?" "Better than most." "Fine," he said, turning back to his desk. "1 week. Prove yourself. Fail, and you're out." Amara didn't thank him. She just nodded, silent and steady. But as the door closed behind her, something passed between them. Not romance, not yet. Just gravity, unspoken, dangerous. Downstairs, word spread fast. The street girl got a job. And upstairs, Celine Hartman watched from a security feed with cold, narrowed eyes. The cleaning supplies smelled of bleach and sorrow. Amara worked in silence, her hands scrubbing glass and tile with military focus. Every brushstroke was a battle, against pity, against rage, against memory. The staff avoided her, whispering behind turned backs. But she didn't care. Not about stairs, not about status. All that mattered was survival. Late that afternoon, the building's upper office called for a deep clean. No one volunteered. Too high, too quiet, too close to him. So they sent her, the girl with no voice, no history, no weight. The elevator hummed as it rose. Amara stared at her reflection in the mirror-paneled walls. The bruises had faded, but something darker remained in her eyes. The door slid open to reveal Leon Hartman's personal floor, sleek, modern, ruthless. Like him, he wasn't there. Only silence, a few scattered documents, and blueprints on the wall. As she dusted the shelves, a framed photo caught her attention, an old newspaper clipping. The headline read, "New Hartman Tower to replace orphanage slum." Amara froze. Her chest tightened as her eyes scanned the article. There it was, St. Miriam's Home for Girls. Her home, flattened 2 years ago by a luxury development deal. She remembered the day, the bulldozers, the eviction notice, Sister Rahima's scream. No warning, no mercy. Just concrete where their childhood used to be. And the man behind it all, Leon Hartman. Her fingers trembled. Rage swelled like a wave, but she caught herself. He didn't know. He hadn't recognized her. Why would he? She was just another shadow in the streets he'd helped erase. She had a choice now. Walk away. Quit. Spit in his face. Or stay. Endure. Get close enough to understand him. Close enough to make a different kind of choice later. She exhaled slowly, placing the frame back exactly where it was. Then she turned, picked up her mop, and went back to work. Downstairs, Leon passed the security desk, glancing briefly at the monitors. One showed Amara in his office, cleaning silently. He watched her for a moment, then walked on. In the shadows of that unfinished empire, neither of them knew how deep their histories had already entwined, but the story had chosen its players, and Amara had made her first move. Celine's heels clicked like gunshots across the marble floor. She entered Leon's penthouse office without knocking, draped in a crimson silk robe and expensive irritation. The kind of beauty that froze rooms, the kind of woman who never asked, only commanded. "I saw her," she said flatly. Leon didn't look up from his tablet. "Who?" "The girl, your girl. She's not mine," he replied. "She needed work, that's all." Celine walked behind him, lips near his ear. "You've never hired street trash before." Leon tensed. "She reminds me of someone," he said. "That's all." And what does she remind you of? Your guilty conscience?" Leon's silence answered for him. Celine straightened and smirked. "I'm warning you, Leo. Don't let pity become weakness. You know what happened last time." He met her eyes. "This isn't the last time." "No," she purred. "It's the beginning." Downstairs, Amara scrubbed the hallway floors with hands that ached. Her mind burned with the article, with Leon's name. Every step she took in that building felt like walking inside the bones of the home he'd taken. Still, she stayed. She needed answers, and for that, she needed access. She noticed something that morning. Leon's executive pass card left on the janitor's tray during a phone call. He hadn't noticed her nearby. Amara hesitated. One wrong move could destroy her. But the truth was buried somewhere in his office, and truth was worth risking everything for. That night, when the building quieted and guards began their routine patrol, she slipped back up. One swipe of the card, one breath held. The door opened. Inside, she moved like a whisper, avoiding cameras, scanning folders, digital files, anything that might tell her why her orphanage had been targeted. She found partial blueprints marked Phase 1, Land Clearance, High-Value Plot. Her orphanage had been labeled in red. Non-critical displacement. No liability. Non-critical. That's what they'd called the girls. Like weeds. She snapped photos on her old phone and backed out, barely. But Celine was watching. From a private surveillance feed Leon never bothered to check, she watched Amara exit the office with something clenched in her fist. Her lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "She's smarter than I thought," Celine whispered, "and that makes her more fun to destroy." The next morning, the building smelled sweeter than usual. Staff murmured in the corners. A tray of imported pastries had appeared in the break room. A gift, someone said, from Madame Celine. But the air was sharp with tension. It clung to Amara like wet cloth. She kept her head down, cleaning the marble lobby with the same quiet intensity as always. Until she saw it. A spilled wine bottle, shattered glass, crimson across the white floor, a trail of footprints leading from the mess, her footprints. Confused, she turned, just in time to hear gasps. Celine stood at the top of the grand staircase, dressed in pearl white, looking down like a queen from her throne. Her voice rang sharp. Stop right there. Everyone froze. Amara's mop fell from her hands. Celine descended, slow and deliberate, as if she'd been rehearsing this. I asked for the new cleaner to deliver wine to the conference suite. Instead, I find this, she gestured to the broken glass, and a report that my private bottle was stolen. Whispers bloomed like wildfire. I didn't touch anything, Amara said softly. Celine stepped closer. No? Then why are your shoes stained in Shiraz? Amara looked down. Her soles were red. Her heart dropped. She'd walked through the mess without noticing. But the bottle, the trail, it had been planted. She knew it. And yet, proof? None. Leon entered from the side hallway, his brows furrowed. What's going on? Celine turned smoothly. She broke into the VIP cellar, an expensive mistake for someone with such humble beginnings. Amara met Leon's eyes. I didn't. Something flickered in his face, uncertainty. He turned to Celine. Why would she do that? She's clever, Celine replied, too quickly. Desperate girls often are. Silence pulsed through the lobby. Amara stood surrounded by lies, by wealth, by invisible walls she couldn't break through. Leon finally spoke. Clean this up. Everyone back to work. He didn't defend her, but he didn't fire her either. Celine's eyes narrowed. Later, as Amara scrubbed the wine-stained floor, she felt eyes watching her from every angle. No one offered help. No one spoke. But inside, something hardened. She was done surviving. Now, she would start watching too. Because this wasn't just cruelty. It was a warning. And wars don't start with battles. They start with broken glass. Leon watched Amara from the window. She moved like wind through stone, quiet, constant, unbreakable. Her hands scrubbed stairs that led to fortunes she'd never touch. Her head stayed low, but her eyes never wavered. For days he'd watched the staff avoid her, watched Celine pretend not to notice, watched the way Amara endured the silence, like a soldier, not a victim. He didn't know why it bothered him, only that it did. That evening, as dusk spilled over the skyline, Leon stayed late in his office. Reports sat unopened on his desk. His mind wandered to her. The wine incident still gnawed at him. The cameras had mysteriously glitched that morning. Celine said the footage was lost, but the timing was too convenient. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Amara stood in the doorway, mop in hand, cheeks dusted with sweat. She looked tired but steady. I can come back, she said. No, come in. She stepped inside cautiously. Silence filled the room like thick smoke. He motioned to a water bottle. You look like you could use a break. She didn't sit, but she nodded. Thank you. A pause. You never asked why I stayed, she said suddenly. Leon glanced up. Most girls would have left after what happened, she continued. But I didn't. You never asked why. I figured you needed the job. I need a lot of things, she replied. But not all of them are worth this much pain. He stood slowly, walking to the window beside her. The city buzzed below, rich lives layered over broken ones. You don't strike me as someone who breaks easy, he said. I don't, Amara whispered, but even stones crack in the right pressure. Their eyes met. For the first time, neither looked away. Leon saw it clearly now, the anger she buried, the questions she held, the fire she refused to smother. And maybe, just maybe, the reflection of something in himself. He spoke softly. If someone's hurting you, I want to know. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The silence said everything. That night, Celine watched their conversation unfold on a hidden screen. Jaw clenched, lips tight. She reached for her glass of wine and whispered, You want his attention, Amara? Fine, let's see how you like being seen. Outside, thunder rolled, and the war moved one step closer to fire. The Rose-Glass Charity Gala was a world made of diamonds and deception. Silk gowns swept the floor. Laughter clinked like glass under chandeliers. Cameras flashed as Kigali's elite sipped wine and whispered secrets behind painted smiles. Amara stood near the entrance, dressed in a plain black service uniform, balancing a silver tray with practiced grace. Her fingers trembled, but her eyes stayed calm. Tonight wasn't about survival. Tonight was about proving she could exist in their world without being erased. Leon hadn't spoken to her since their quiet moment days ago, but when she'd entered the hall, his gaze had found her. Not like a man watching staff, like a man noticing. And Celine saw it. Celine moved like silk and shadow through the crowd, draped in a pearl-white gown that shimmered like envy. Her laugh echoed in corners. Her hand clung to Leon's arm just tight enough to leave a mark. She had planned everything. The drink, the timing, the guest. An aging politician, one of Leon's investors, approached the bar. Celine smiled sweetly, whispered something to the bartender, and watched as the man picked up the exact glass she intended him to. Amara stepped forward with the tray, offering him a second drink to replace it. The man refused. He liked what he already had. Minutes later, he collapsed, gasps erupted, screams followed. People rushed to surround him as he writhed on the marble, clutching his throat. The music stopped. The air turned electric. Then someone shouted. She handed him the drink. All eyes turned to Amara. She stood frozen, tray still in hand, as a guest pointed at her. Celine's voice cut through the noise, calm but cruel. Security. Within seconds, guards grabbed Amara's arms. She didn't fight. She just looked at Leon. I didn't, she began, but his face was unreadable, shocked, silent. The tray clattered to the floor as they dragged her away. Celine exhaled slowly, adjusting a pearl bracelet that gleamed like victory. Leon's heart pounded as chaos unfolded. Somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered, "Something isn't right," but the damage was done. And as Amara was pulled from the glittering hall of pearls and lies, she knew one truth. This wasn't just a setup. It was a trap years in the making. The cell door slammed shut like a coffin lid. Cold concrete, rusted iron, a bed that smelled of old tears and older pain. This was Amara's new world. No trial, no voice, just a stack of false evidence, a string of twisted accusations, and the cold echo of betrayal. Leon hadn't said a word when she was arrested. Not a defense, not a glance. She replayed that moment 1,000 times as she lay on the cell floor. The lights never dimmed, the screams never stopped, and yet silence hurt the most. Her first week behind bars was a war. Other women circled her like wolves, some curious, some cruel. Her clean skin, her quiet eyes, they made her a target. On the second night, someone tried to steal her food. She fought back, she bled, but she didn't break. The guards saw her as another number. The system didn't see her at all. The world outside moved on, feasting, partying, forgetting. And yet, deep inside her chest, something refused to die. She began to write. Scraps of soap wrappers, corners of old books. With a smuggled pencil stub, she began journaling under the mattress. Letters to herself, to the orphanage girls, to Sister Rahima, to the memory of the barefoot child who once dreamed beneath mango trees. Each word was a rebellion. I will not become what they think I am. Outside, Leon Hartman stared at a blank screen in his office, unable to work. The poison had been traced to a private bottle, Celine's, but the security footage was gone. A system glitch, she claimed. Again, he tried to sleep, but Amara's voice echoed in his memory. I didn't. And for the first time, he realized how fast he'd let doubt kill something innocent. He opened a folder labeled Internal Security Logs. Password protected. Only Celine had access. He picked up the phone. Get me everything, now. Back in the cell, Amara folded her hands in her lap. A guard passed by, snorting. You're quieter than the rest? You think that makes you innocent? Amara looked up slowly. No, she said, it makes me dangerous. And with that, she turned back to her journal. Not to survive, to rise. The truth didn't scream. It whispered, quietly, persistently, like a leak in a dam before it bursts. Leon sat in his private study, the glow from his screen casting shadows across his face. Security footage from the gala had been corrupted, but a backup copy had survived on a forgotten server. The IT director had found it, buried and encrypted. And now, Leon saw everything. Celine, whispering to the bartender. The switch of the drinks. The exact moment the poisoned glass was handed to the politician. Not by Amara, by Celine. He stood up so fast his chair crashed behind him. His heart thundered. Guilt wrapped around his throat like a noose. He had let them drag Amara away. He had watched it happen. The woman he was meant to marry had framed an innocent girl and smiled as she did it. That night, Celine returned to their penthouse glowing in silver silk, swirling a wine glass in her hand. She found Leon seated by the fireplace, still and unreadable. She kissed his cheek. You look pale, she said, almost sweetly. Long day? Leon turned, eyes cold. Why did you erase the security footage? Her smile barely faltered. I told you it glitched. You know the system is outdated. I've seen the backup. Silence. Celine set her glass down slowly. You went behind my back? He stood, stepping closer. You lied. You framed her, Celine. You could have destroyed her life. Her face changed. No more sweetness, just steel. She doesn't belong in this world, Leon. She's a stain on your legacy, a distraction. I did what needed to be done. She's a human being. She's a threat, Celine snapped. To us, to you. You don't even see it. Leon stared at her for a long, cold moment. I see everything now. The next morning, Leon's lawyers filed for an immediate investigation. The press didn't have the full story yet, but the whispers started. Celine smiled on the cover of magazines. But beneath her feet, the floor had started to crack, and Amara, deep in her prison cell, felt a shift in the air, like something broken had started to turn. Not justice, not yet, but movement, and movement meant hope. The city skyline was a jagged silhouette against the fading dusk, but within the towering walls of Hartman Enterprises, the atmosphere was anything but serene. Leon stood before the expansive window of his office, the weight of recent discoveries pressing heavily upon him. The evidence against Celine was irrefutable, yet confronting her felt like stepping into a lion's den. A soft chime from his intercom broke his contemplation. "Sir," his assistant's voice was hesitant, "Detective Nshuti is here to see you." Leon straightened, smoothing his tie. "Send him in." The door opened to reveal a tall, lean man with discerning eyes that seemed to pierce through facades. Detective Nshuti had a reputation for unearthing truths others wished buried. "Mr. Hartman," Nshuti greeted, his voice a blend of respect and authority. "Detective," Leon extended a hand, which Nshuti accepted with a firm grip. "Please have a seat." As they settled, Nshuti wasted no time. "I've been reviewing the case against Amara. There are inconsistencies." Leon nodded. "I've come to the same conclusion. I believe she's been framed." Nshuti's gaze sharpened. "Do you have evidence to support this claim?" Leon reached into his desk drawer, retrieving a USB drive. Security footage from the gala. It clearly shows Celine orchestrating the events leading to Amara's arrest. Taking the drive, Nshuti's expression remained unreadable. "This is serious, Leon, accusing your fiancée of such a crime." "I understand the gravity," Leon interrupted, his voice firm, "but I can't let an innocent woman suffer for crimes she didn't commit." Nshuti leaned back, studying Leon intently. "There's more," he finally said. "Celine's been under surveillance for suspected involvement in other illicit activities. Your information could be the linchpin we need." A heavy silence settled between them. "What do you need from me?" Leon asked, determination evident in his tone. "Your full cooperation," Nshuti replied, "and discretion. We need to handle this delicately." Leon nodded. "Whatever it takes to see justice served." As Nshuti stood to leave, he paused. "Be careful, Leon. When you shine a light on shadows, you often attract attention you'd rather avoid." After the detective departed, Leon remained seated, the weight of impending confrontation settling over him. The path ahead was fraught with peril, but his resolve was unwavering. In the depths of the city, behind cold bars and colder hearts, Amara sat on her cot, tracing invisible patterns on the wall. Unbeknownst to her, the tides were beginning to turn, and in the penthouse suite, Celine sipped her wine, oblivious to the storm gathering on her horizon. The penthouse was eerily silent. Leon stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city lights sprawling beneath him. The weight of the USB drive in his pocket felt heavier than it should. Tonight, truths would be laid bare. The elevator chimed softly, announcing Celine's arrival. She stepped into the room, exuding elegance in a midnight blue gown, a picture of poise and confidence. "Leon," she greeted, a hint of surprise in her voice. "I wasn't expecting you home so early." He turned slowly, his gaze piercing. "We need to talk." Celine's smile faltered for a fraction of a second before she masked it. "Of course. Is something wrong?" Leon motioned to the seating area. "Sit." She hesitated but complied, gracefully lowering herself onto the leather couch. Leon remained standing, looming over her. "Amara's in prison because of you," he stated, his voice devoid of emotion. Celine's eyes widened, feigning innocence. "Leon, what are you talking about? That girl—" "Don't," he interrupted sharply, pulling the USB drive from his pocket. "I have footage, unedited, unaltered. It shows everything." A tense silence enveloped the room. Celine's facade cracked, her expression hardening. "And what do you plan to do with it?" Leon stepped closer, his tone icy. "I'm going to exonerate Amara, and you'll face the consequences of your actions." She laughed bitterly. "Do you think the board will stand by you? Do you think the media will spare you, associating with a street girl over your fiancé?" Leon leaned in, his face inches from hers. I'd rather stand alone with integrity than be shackled to deceit. Celine's eyes flashed with fury. You're making a mistake, Leon. No, he replied firmly. I made a mistake trusting you. He straightened, moving towards the door. Pack your things. I want you out by morning. As he exited, Celine sat motionless, her mind racing. The empire she'd meticulously built around Leon was crumbling. But she wasn't one to go down without a fight. The morning sun cast a cold light over the city, but within the walls of Hartman Enterprises, the atmosphere was anything but illuminated. Leon sat at his desk, the weight of the previous night's confrontation pressing heavily upon him. The decision to sever ties with Celine was necessary, yet the path ahead remained shrouded in uncertainty. A soft knock at the door broke his reverie. "Come in," Leon called, his voice steady but weary. Detective Nshuti entered, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Hartman," he began, "we've initiated the investigation into Miss Celine's activities. However, she's proving elusive." Leon frowned. "What do you mean?" "She's disappeared," Nshuti replied. "Left her residence, disconnected her known lines. It's as if she's vanished." A cold chill ran down Leon's spine. Celine was many things, but predictable was not one of them. Her sudden disappearance was a cause for concern. "Increase the search efforts," Leon instructed. "She won't stay hidden for long." Nshuti nodded. "There's more. We've received word from the prison. Amara's situation is deteriorating. Without concrete evidence to exonerate her, her release remains uncertain." Leon clenched his fists. "I won't let her suffer for Celine's sins." The detective's gaze softened. "I believe you, Mr. Hartman, but time is of the essence." As Nshuti departed, Leon's resolve hardened. He had built an empire from nothing, faced adversaries who sought his downfall. But this battle was personal. He reached for his phone, dialing a number he hadn't used in years. "It's Leon," he said when the line connected. "I need your help." On the other end, a voice responded, "I was wondering when you'd call." As the call ended, Leon stared out over the cityscape, determination burning in his eyes. In the shadows, Celine watched from a distance, her mind racing with plans of her own. She had been cast aside, but she was far from defeated. And in the confines of her cell, Amara clung to hope, unaware of the storm brewing beyond the prison walls. The city pulsed with a restless energy, as if sensing the storm about to break. Leon stood in his office, the weight of recent events pressing heavily upon him. The evidence against Celine was damning, yet her sudden disappearance had thrown a wrench into his plans. Time was slipping through his fingers, and with each passing moment, Amara remained unjustly imprisoned. A sharp knock at the door jolted him from his thoughts. "Come in," he called, his voice taut. Detective Nshuti entered, his expression grave. "We've traced Celine's movements. She's been in contact with several unsavory individuals." Leon's jaw tightened. "What does that mean?" "It means she's not going down without a fight," Nshuti replied. "She's leveraging every connection, every secret, to protect herself." Leon ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. "And Amara?" Nshuti hesitated. "There's been an incident at the prison." Leon's heart pounded. "Is she—" "She's alive," Nshuti assured quickly. "But she's been moved to solitary confinement after an altercation. She's vulnerable, Leon." The room felt suffocating. The walls, the city, the very air seemed to close in. Leon clenched his fists. "We need to act, now." Nshuti nodded. "Agreed, but we must be strategic. Celine's reach is extensive." Leon's eyes burned with determination. "Then we cut off her arms, expose her, make it impossible for her to hide." A tense silence settled between them. "There's more," Nshuti finally said. "Celine's not just fighting for herself. She's aiming to take you down with her." Leon's lips pressed into a thin line. "Let her try." As Nshuti departed, Leon stared out over the city he had built his empire upon. The skyline was as beautiful as it was ruthless. The stage was set. The players were in motion, and the final act was about to begin. The courtroom buzzed with hushed whispers as the judge's gavel echoed, calling for order. Amara stood at the defendant's table, her posture upright but her eyes betraying the turmoil within. Beside her, Leon exuded a quiet confidence, his presence a pillar of support. Celine sat across the room, her once impeccable demeanor now a facade barely concealing the storm beneath. The prosecution presented its case, but Leon's legal team countered with irrefutable evidence. Security footage revealing Celine's orchestration of the gala incident, testimonies from key witnesses, and a paper trail leading directly to her machinations. As the evidence mounted, Celine's composure began to crack. Her defense unraveled, and the weight of her actions bore down upon her. After deliberation, the verdict was delivered. Amara is hereby exonerated of all charges. Celine Dupont is found guilty of conspiracy, fraud, and attempted murder. She is sentenced to 20 years in prison. A collective gasp filled the room. Amara's eyes welled with tears, not of sorrow, but of relief. Leon reached for her hand, a silent promise passing between them. Months later, the sun cast a golden hue over the sprawling gardens of the Hartman estate. Guests gathered, their faces alight with joy and anticipation. Amara walked down the aisle, her gown a blend of modern elegance and traditional African motifs, symbolizing the fusion of her past and present. Leon awaited her, his eyes reflecting unwavering devotion. Their vows spoke of trials endured, battles fought, and a love that emerged resilient and true. As they sealed their union with a kiss, the crowd erupted in celebration. Among the attendees were the girls from the orphanage, their faces beaming with pride and hope. Sister Rahima stood beside them, her heart full. In a stark gray prison cell, Celine sat alone, the echoes of her choices surrounding her. The walls bore no luxury, no reminders of her former life. She had time to reflect, to regret, and to reckon with the cost of her ambitions.